Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection of humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I am here with Susan.
Hi there.
And today we will be covering... It's really not the full thing. I want to talk about the framework of a model of behavioral science ethics.
Wow, a framework of a model. A model of a framework of a plan of a framework of a model.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. Exactly.
You want to talk around ethics.
Yeah.
Ethics and technology?
No.
Ethics and behavioral science?
Behavioral science, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I guess we're going to find out.
So... What? Okay, so I like to talk about things on spectrums. Let's talk about ethics on a spectrum.
Okay.
Specifically with behavioral economics, behavioral science. So behavioral science obviously there are lots of ways you can manipulate the humans into doing stuff.
Right.
Would you like to give a simple example?
A simple example of how you can manipulate someone, sure. So if you want them to do something, take an action or buy something, you can tell them how many other people have bought it, and if a lot of people are buying it, then they will feel this need, this unconscious, urgent need to be part of the group and buy it too.
Because our brain works that we want to we're very social and we want to do what everybody else is doing. Was that the answer you were looking for? Can you go just a little bit deeper, a little more scientific?
About why we feel that urge?
Yes.
Well, I'm reading. I'm always reading. I'm reading this book I really like by Harari called *Sapiens*. I think I mentioned it on another podcast.
Literally every podcast now.
I'm sorry. It's a really good book, and it's a really big, long book, and I'm reading it slowly, so that means every time we have a podcast, I'll be mentioning the latest thing in it. But seriously, he's talking in there about how humans developed language and how we use language to gossip and to talk about each other. We are, humans are fascinated by social stuff and social arrangements and what everybody else is doing. And there's probably an evolutionary psychology, anthropology reason why that is. Some animals that have learned to live together and be in a group together survived better. So it's just part of our hardwiring to pay attention to what everybody else is doing and to tend to do what everyone else is doing. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So that's why if you give someone a message that, 4 million people have already purchased this product or have signed up or taken this action or joined, or you're just going to feel like I should do it too. Not always, but a lot of the time.
Okay. So I would hazard that most people do not see taking advantage of that as ethically wrong. I'll give you another similar example.
Okay.
Wheaties puts a well-known athlete on their cover, prompting you to want to buy it.
Do they still do that?
I don't even know if Wheaties is around. Probably. Why wouldn't they? It's not that hard.
They did that when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Was that true when you were growing up?
I don't know if they're selling a whole lot of Wheaties anymore. Okay, this way. You walk by a clothing store and it's summertime, and they have pictures of beautiful people in their swimwear,
Yeah.
to get you to go in the store, or at least look at their offering, look at the sign of their offering, and they're using your biological impulse to want to mate to distract you.
Is that unethical?
No, I would say the vast majority of people would not consider using a picture of beautiful half-naked people unethical, so long as it's not too far.
Is it manipulative?
Yeah, but that's just marketing. It's not the whole point of advertising.
I don't know. That's a big question.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to answer these questions today. I'm just trying to come up with a framework of where people might fall, because it's going to be different. So again, this is why behavioral economics does not... so you do behavioral psychology, which finds out universal truths about humans. Behavioral economics can't tell you, what juice you're going to drink tomorrow. It can only tell you the factors that will influence your decision. And then it's up to, how those factors kind of play out. And in the same way, I don't think that we can determine right here, right, what the best ethical way is, but we can maybe figure out a framework to do so, at least somewhat.
Well, okay, let me ask a deeper question. Why would we need to do a framework? Like, why are we even concerned about ethics and behavioral economics?
I don't know. Maybe we're not.
Well, that wasn't the answer I was expecting.
Well, that's the economics answer. Maybe it's fine.
All right, but then why did you bring it up? Then why the heck are we talking about it?
Well, because the thing with ethics is that there's not a right or wrong answer. I'm not.
That's funny, but it's ethics. So wouldn't there be a right or wrong answer?
No, absolutely not. Why would there be a right? What do you mean there would be a right or wrong answer?
Well, aren't there some things that are ethical and other things that are not ethical? So the idea is that you figure out what's not ethical and then get everyone to agree not to do it anymore.
That's how we're going to come up with this framework. You're totally correct. The idea of something is ethical or not ethical is completely arbitrary and changes on human whims all the time. It's up to society. The Spartans would literally murder babies because they weren't large enough. Because the only thing that mattered to the Spartans was being strong, and the idea of giving to the weak and these Judeo-Christian notions of fairness and equality would have made no sense to the Spartans. And so their ethics and their morality was to literally murder the weak people. It's not that their ethics are wrong. It's
so
just
then
that
what? Okay, all right.
In the Judeo-Christian tradition, their ethics are immoral. But they're it's just arbitrary based on society and personal preference is my point. Another example, Romeo and Juliet were 14 and 12, and were having wanted to have sex and get married, and or a 30-year-old business guy marrying a 12-year-old back in the 1700s was a totally normal thing because you could just sell your daughter. That was just the way the world worked, and no one even thought that was a problem. And these days, right, if a 30-year-old marries a 12-year-old, he's going to prison for a very long time. So ethics is this fluid spectrum, and just because things are there is no, in my opinion, there's no right or wrong. There's no I don't have divine right to come down from God and say this is ethical and this is not. And that's why we have to come up with some sort of framework of what is ethical at the moment. And, that might change in 100 years, but that's my ethics story.
Although there are some people, I don't know if it's a lot or not, that feel that there are absolute ethics. There are absolute rights and wrongs, and it doesn't matter what society thinks you should or shouldn't be doing X or Y.
That's
right.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And why do they think that?
I don't know why.
Because society told them to think that way. So that would be my counter. I'm not saying that that being, we're all in society, and so if they believe that there are absolute rights and wrongs in the society we currently live, I'm not going to dispute that. I think that's probably true. There appears to be at least somewhat universal rights and wrongs in most cultures.
All right. Back to
like
okay,
murder
well,
is really not acceptable.
well,
almost
I
anywhere.
see. I gotta interject because of the book I'm reading, *Sapiens*.
Yeah.
In which he says that that this idea that there are norms and there are ethics and there are wide swaths of society that believe one thing. He says that it used to be that varied greatly from tribe to tribe and band to band, and that there's a lot more diversity of what a social norm is and what's considered okay and what's considered ethical in our history than we tend to think.
Thank you for agreeing with me. I would just say, in general, humans have a biological understanding of fairness. And so being cruel and unfair traditionally in many cultures has been looked down upon. I don't think exclusively. And obviously there are always exceptions if you're being unfair, but for the right reasons.
But I think what's
right? Like
different.
We can murder someone as long as they're a terrorist, right? Like there are always like these
right.
exceptions.
Well, what you said, you said it's not okay to murder people, and yet, as you said, the Spartans did. I mean, there were cultures. I don't know if there are
yes,
anymore.
But they weren't doing it to be cruel. It was simply for the
they
greater
were doing
good,
it,
for the greater good of society.
Right,
but whatever that
right,
means. I mean,
right.
who knows? Right. Yeah. But there have always been exceptions. Genghis Khan brutally murdered anyone who wasn't loyal or submit to him. So I mean, anyways, the point is that I personally believe that there are variations, and so especially as an economist, you don't just set like these like universal axioms down as to what's moral and what's not. You set up a framework, which is what we're trying to do. So, that said, that whole long spiel, we do live in the traditional Western Judeo-Christian society where there is a sense of fairness, and the idea that you would, I can start from the premise that most people would agree that you shouldn't be unreasonably cruel to someone just to be cruel, to show strength and power. I can say that with confidence, and so we can start there, and so in our society, there is a level of manipulation that goes too far. We as a society have decided that, and that is. And so what I want to do is do exactly what you suggested, is find out what we would generally consider to be what most people would consider to be on the unethical part of the spectrum, or at least on the further out, traditionally less ethical, and then work our way in and see if we can't, so you might be, for example, so on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Where 10 is do whatever you want, it's all fine. 1 would be we have to be really careful about how we do things, okay? You might fall on an 8, you might fall on a 6, you might be a 5. Like they're right. You personally might fall at a different point. So all I want to do is just put it on the scale, and then those listening can determine where they fall.
I think it's going to be much harder than you think, but go ahead. I'm game.
I'm not sure I have to make numbers for everything. So on the far end of the spectrum is fraud, okay?
Well, what's fraud?
So fraud is taking advantage of people, specifically targeting vulnerable populations and taking advantage of them.
Okay, so you're talking about...
You call up someone's grandmother and you say, your grandson is in the hospital. He's in a coma. He may die at any moment. I know that you totally have Alzheimer's or some sort of dementia and cannot think properly. I am the doctor. My name is Dr. Tobias Funke. I need access to your bank account right now or your grandson will die. He needs $5,000 right now. I need access. And you only target old, people in who have dementia. That would be fraud.
That's pretty bad.
That's preying on the weak and the sick and the elderly. And we as a society would probably deem that pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
But there's psychology involved. And in how you set it up, it's probably quite effective. You have fear of loss. You're using I don't know. I don't think we actually have done a lot of research on why you feel connected to your family ties.
Oh, we haven't talked about it, but
I know.
There is a lot of research on it.
We should maybe do that. That's question. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Obviously you feel supportive of your tribe. Do you love your brother, for example, because he's part of your tribe, or is there a separate type of attachment there?
There's a belief that the similarity in DNA causes an urge to protect the closeness of the DNA.
Huh. Okay. Which would make sense. That would make sense. Okay. Well, that's fair. That's fascinating. All right. Yeah. So you're using these. Is it fair to call that behavioral psychology of a sort? In that fraud case?
Maybe. Yeah.
Definitely fear of loss.
Yeah.
So, do you think you could find a lot of people who would say that behavior is totally fine, have fun?
I think you'd find some people, because people can be very weird.
Well, people, you ask a million people
or maybe,
a question, you're going to find.
Or, but you can always get into the argument. What if I'm doing it because my child is going to die unless I get them some money to get some medicine? And I happen to know that the people I'm calling up are very, very wealthy and they can part with a couple $100 and it won't hurt me.
No. I'm not.
It won't hurt them.
I'm not finding justification. I'm staying on the far end of the spectrum.
Okay.
You're targeting poor, old people who live by themselves and have no support system and have limited mental capabilities, specifically because they're vulnerable.
Then I would think most people would say that you are in the unethical range.
Almost all. And I do believe in almost all states in the United States that is, in fact, a crime.
And what about around the world?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know about fraud around the world.
Okay.
I have a sneaky suspicion it's illegal in a lot of countries, but I don't know for sure. Or at least there's some sort of cause of action.
Now, in the U.S., because we've mentioned before in some of our episodes that I've done some expert witness stuff for the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission.
Yes.
Who regulates fraud like this if it's done, for instance, over the internet. Interestingly, I don't know if this is true in all the cases they prosecute, but it's certainly true in some because it's true of the ones I've worked on. Intent is not a factor. So it doesn't matter if you intended to, defraud someone or steal their money or what, right? All that matters is whether you did end up taking their money, even if you didn't mean to.
Yeah, so there are, just for just as quick explanation, if you'd like.
Yeah.
There's it's called mens rea, which means mental state. Certain crimes require mens rea, certain crimes do not. Certain crimes then have different standards. So there's so for example, there's the knowingly standard, right? You known or should have known that this would have caused an injury, right? Versus you were just negligent, right? Well, you didn't have to know, but if you did it. And then there's stuff called, there's strict liability, and this is probably what they're using. So, for example, if you've ever heard of statutory rape, it's not about your intent, right? If you do it, it's a crime. Intent is not a factor. So that's probably why intent is not. Usually in the justice system, especially ethically, we do believe that intent is important. If you intend to rip off old people, it's somehow worse than if you just kind of do so accidentally.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be particular laws that they're using, and those laws don't require intent or something.
But even if you just take the legal aspect out of it, right? If I kill someone on accident, plotting to kill someone and murdering them, people just find it's worse somehow than if I suddenly just, we're in a bar fight and I in a rage,
Yeah. I just wanted to comment that in terms of some of these questions about, what's fraud from the FTC computer internet point of view, according to at least some of their cases, they don't care whether you intended to commit fraud or not. If you harmed someone,
right,
they're gonna go after you. All right, keep going. So we've established that it's not okay to do the your grandson is in the hospital scam. Right?
Right.
All right. So
again, this is up to everyone. I think we can fairly safely say that the vast majority of people would not be okay with that.
Okay.
So, yeah. So starting there.
Yeah.
That
was the easy one.
Well, yeah. Okay, so let's move on.
All right.
Can you think of some other ways that we do stuff
that are on that end of the spectrum?
Yes, though, but maybe not as far. And this is why I want to get into the behavioral psychology stuff.
Well, there's a whole bunch of them that I think are in the middle.
Okay, go for. I mean, you don't have to be exactly. We don't have to go in order, but just kind of go for middle or higher up.
All right. So so kind of maybe scams, you're saying?
Yeah.
Maybe scams. I don't know. I am so skeptical of everything that to me a lot of things are scams that to other people would not be considered scams.
Don't even worry about scams then.
No, I'm just saying, okay. So let's take some common things that people try and sell you where there really isn't any known, it doesn't, there's no science behind the fact that it's going to do what they say it's going to do. How about those?
Okay. Yeah, feel free to give me an example.
Well, now we're going to get really controversial.
Okay.
I'm always concerned about getting controversial. But I guess it's okay. If people get
again,
mad,
we're not saying it's right or wrong. We're just putting the option on the spectrum and people can decide for themselves. It's not controversial.
You're really pushing me here. All right. So, the science of weight loss tells us that people losing weight and whether people can lose weight and whether they can keep the weight off and whether it's healthy to have your weight go up and down and up and down. The science is not supportive of many weight loss schemes. And yet, people spend enormous sums of money trying to lose weight again and again and again. And companies are very willing to take their money, even though it's probably not going to work.
Sure. Okay. So I think I don't think that's a. I think that's a good example. I don't think that's controversial. There are.
Oh, I think it is controversial.
No. Because there are various levels. On one end, you have companies who probably try to do the right thing and probably have helped a lot of people, but maybe not everyone, and they probably make a little money on the side. But their intent is they're at least somewhat reputable. And then on the other hand, you have take this magical pill to lose 10 pounds in 10 days. Preying
and
on,
the pill is caffeine.
Yeah. Or there are all kinds of pills that are probably there's one in particular, if I remember correctly. It just expands in your stomach to 10 times its size or something. So you take it and literally
terrible.
Then there's this giant thing in your stomach and then you don't feel full.
You mean you feel full?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, so there are so even on that there's definitely spectrums. There are the there are the Ponzi schemes, right? The fitness clubs.
Yeah.
Some of which are more reputable than others. Right? But so you sign up for the fitness club and they sell you the protein shakes and the drinks and everything, and then you get paid more if you sign up some of your friends. And it's just a pyramid scheme. But it's a pyramid scheme that is weight loss focused.
Yeah. So, the interesting thing I think about the whole weight loss thing is that people, again, depending on, this is definitely culturally specific, but, for many people, there's a desire to live up to a certain physical ideal that they have for themselves or that they think society has for them. Whether that's reasonable or not, whether that's healthy or not, that can all be debated. And so you're kind of preying on people's insecurities and, that they don't like themselves, they don't like their bodies, they wish they were thinner. And so that I think that, I guess you could ask then, ethical questions around that. So I have a question for you, though, as we're doing this. So this comes back to, the first example you gave with the, your grandson's in the hospital. That person who said that was definitely lying, right? Mm-hmm. And they were lying in order to get you to part with your money for their gain. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're talking about something like the fitness pyramid or the weight loss schemes or whatever, sometimes people are outright lying. Sometimes they're not lying. Maybe they're just ignoring. Maybe they don't know the science or the facts.
It's a lie by omission.
Or maybe they know, but, so how much does, lying come into this? If you know that there's no scientific evidence that this thing you're selling works, or if you didn't even, you don't want to know, so you don't even check it out.
Well, this is actually a much deeper question because it comes down to, well, then, what's a fact and what's not a fact? What does it mean to lie? So, for example, I have a weight loss program. One of the people in my weight loss program lost 30 pounds, right? Fred lost 30 pounds in 2 months. And here's the picture. Here's a picture of Fred. Fred is not an actor. Fred is actually a real person. It actually happened to Fred.
Okay.
Can you therefore say that your weight loss program works?
No, because you don't know that that's why he lost the weight.
Well, right. No, I know, right? But now you're getting into, well, then what's a fact, and then you have to, you have to have proof and evidence, and that's a little harder. I think there are people who make claims that are not true.
They know they're not true.
They know they're not true. Or
like they know that the person is, that Fred is an actor, and they know Fred's an actor, and
yes.
they know that the picture of him 50 pounds overweight and then the picture of him now are doctored Photoshop things.
But it's covered. You can lose 30 pounds in 3 months.
Someone could lose.
You could lose, right? Like, it's
possible.
Yeah, sure. You could be on fentanyl the whole time and lose weight, or maybe it's because you're on a program.
All right. So how ethical is any of that then? I mean, so yeah,
and that's kind of, and now we're getting into like marketing jumbo 101. So let me give you some examples. Okay, I was recently watching there's first of all, there's the great ones that are like, like over half of all women sweat more than average. That's a good one. You could be one of them. I recently watched a commercial about...
how could over half of all the women sweat more than average? Because then the average would be different.
It was like... It was something... It was... Or it was even over 50%, or so it was basically saying that half of people sweat more than average, and you could be one of them. Was like the I was just like, oh god. I recently watched a commercial about it's for it was for I don't know, some sort of female product. I'm not exactly sure what it was, and it said I remember it said 60% of us don't have a pad that fits.
Well, that's probably true.
No, but literally, what does that mean? Because this was an ad on TV, so 60% of us, right? That's clearly so 50% are men and women. We'll just start there. So
well, they meant 60% of women.
But that is not true, because 60% of women do not wear pads. That's just
all right,
that's just math, right? Because
of
you have
women that wear
tampons
pads
and people who are past menopause.
All right, well they meant 60% of women who wear pads.
How do you know?
What's your point?
Well, I'm just saying the way they said it, right? 60% of us, and it wasn't even 60% wear pads. It was 60% of us wear a pad that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
What? So 60%. So it's 60% of what? And that's the problem, is because literally that could mean anyone. It could be 60% of us, and us in quotes means women in this office on a Wednesday, right? Like, like what, so basically what you end up doing is you just make up, you literally can define the whatever ratios you want to literally be anything you want. And then you can just say, 60% to get a big number. Big sounds big. If I'm listening, I'm very influenced by that large number. And then and now they've hooked me.
All right. So ethical or not ethical?
You cannot ask me that question. I told you we're not determining.
Why?
For the first 10 minutes I told you we're not sent down from God. We can't determine if something is ethical or not. This is not, we can't do that. It's not our place. We're not the official ethics body of design and marketing. You gotta stop asking me that.
Well, okay, all right. If I have to stop asking,
because I can't tell you.
Then not to be difficult, but why are we having this conversation?
Because we need to figure. Someone should know if. So, like, there should be a line somewhere that at least you can identify yourself on the line. Because, I'll put it this way. There are some things that that enough people deem to be so unethical, we put social pressure on people not to do them.
All right. Okay.
And maybe that should be true when it comes to design and behavioral science. But we have to figure out where the line is.
All right. So the example we were talking about before about the weight loss products, is the line there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay. I can't.
You said we have to figure out where the line's going to go.
Oh, by we I mean society.
Okay.
Like a body of people. We have to. We're just figuring out various ways and strategies to tackle this problem.
Okay. That was your framework idea.
Yes. This is the whole. This is the whole thing. Personally, I can tell you my opinion, but like that. But when we're coming up with what the industry should do as a body, now that we're learning all this stuff,
I have a question.
Can't tell you.
All right, I have a question for you. Would you recommend to the body that is going to come up with this that they consider the question about lying versus not lying as part of the framework?
Well,
is that important?
I think it is important. I think intent is important. But okay, so we'll okay. We'll just jump way ahead to factors that should be considered. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I think that it's important that okay. I think there is a difference between people's okay. We'll skip all the way ahead, like I said.
You don't have to. You can keep
going.
No.
We'll skip ahead.
All right.
Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to segment different actions into different effects. Okay. So there are and you can help me out here. Okay.
All right.
So there are unconscious, unavoidable reactions. So someone throws a baseball at your head.
You mean accidentally?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
You duck.
All right.
Right? Something jumps out at you in a horror movie, right? You have a reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that is you cannot control that. Okay?
Okay.
I personally find that to be on the far end of because there's no, so basically in my personal opinion the line should be about control. So if you know that people, and obviously there's tons of gray space which we'll get to, but if people literally it's how much can people stop themselves from being influenced.
Ooh, I think that's that's a very difficult.
Well, no, I understand.
Idea.
But how much can people stop themselves from, I think it's a factor of a couple things. How much can people stop themselves from being from taking action? That's one. And two, how much, what's the magnitude of that influence? So if your marketing ploy is to literally throw baseballs at people and then say, check out, my hot dog stand, I would say you are literally getting attention by brute force. And there's no way I can avoid giving you my full attention because you've thrown a baseball at me.
Okay. And so what are you saying?
I think that would be on the that would not be okay.
But
Brute forcing your way into my consciousness in a way that I
but
don't
if
like.
you show me a picture of a very sexy person, I can't ignore that.
Uh,
You just forced your way into my consciousness.
yeah.
So is that okay?
Yeah, that's probably okay. Well, because I think it also has to do with the magnitude, okay, of the action. So I guess maybe the baseballs are okay. I mean, it's a crime to throw baseballs at people, so that's a potential problem. I mean, but it's because at least in the sexy person scenario, I'm not compelled to purchase it, right? I'm compelled to look at it. You've got my attention.
Well, in the baseball scenario, I'm not. You can throw a baseball at me, hit me in the head. I look up, and then you say, "Here, how about you buy a hot dog?" And I say no.
Well, that's why I gave the two factors, right? There's the there's the magnitude of getting the first factor is how much do I have control over the next step.
Okay.
And then the second factor is what's the magnitude of action that you're forcing me to take, right? So if you throw a baseball at me, I'm forced to react to it. But that's one, so that's very high. But then the second factor is then what is my what action am I being nudged or forced to take? It's to look at something, which I think is less onerous than to purchase something, right? So it's causing me yeah. So there's so in the grandmother example, you are the amount of pressure you're putting on my brain to take an action is fairly high, and potentially higher because I, as a grandmother with a disability, am somewhat compromised.
Mm-hmm.
But then the action that you're prompting is really, really high, right? Which is to empty my bank account and give it to you.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right?
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
there's
my
high severity in many of the touch points.
Right. So it's about the level of response and
I get it.
the level of reaction. Okay. And so I think those two together can kind of, right? So if you have a high level of response, well, if it's probably too high, that's probably like a baseball, it's probably too high. If it's a sexy picture, that's probably high. But I think it depends on the level. I mean, so if you just had like a totally naked person, right? Or like literally people having sex on a shop window, people would say that's too high.
Yeah, I'm starting to get it.
Right?
And then what's the result? Is the result is that I drain my bank account, or is the result that I look?
Yes, but literally, if it's like a sexual image, it's so provocative that like I cannot I can't help
not look
at it, and that's that's obnoxiously obtrusive. That's like
okay.
so even if it's just looking, that's too high for society. But
now what do you? All right, wait. So now I want to introduce another factor.
Yeah.
So, if let's say that you're talking about.
Yeah, let's try to get more into behavioral science. So try to use some of the research.
Well, I was thinking about, okay, so let's say that I'm a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm addicted to heroin.
Okay.
And so I'm walking down the street, and I haven't had, I don't know what the terminology, I'm going to show myself to not be a heroin addict really quickly here, but I haven't had a fix. Is that what people would say? I don't know what people would say. In a couple hours.
You could just say, I haven't had any heroin in a while.
I haven't had any heroin
in
all day, and I am quite an addict, so I'm getting to the point where, I'm feeling it. And then I see, two people having sex, so that grabs my attention. And then somebody offers me heroin to buy.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, we take that and then we contrast it with the person next to me who's walking by and sees the same thing, but is not a heroin addict.
Right.
So is not, will still, the two people having sex will grab their attention, but then, buying the heroin, it's like, no. So how much of this, again, back to the ethics of it, depends on, we now have an individual, right, who is physically addicted to something,
mm-hmm.
and therefore has a very hard time saying no to it.
So I think you have to take probably there's probably like a really good statistical way to segment this, right? So you take the you take like the square of the you take the mean and then the square of the standard deviation of the 90th percentile to get the something about the level of outliers, like so basically. But I don't know exactly how to describe it in statistical terms. But right, so it's about how much attention or how much influence does it have generally, right, to the median person, and then what's the worst at the extremes.
Okay,
right?
All right.
So in your example, which of course you're alluding to, people who are addicted to perhaps gambling. Or people, or right. So you have people who are addicted to gambling. And
there's
an app that's blackjack with real money.
There's a continuum, right? Because we can talk about there are things that are physically addicting, like heroin,
right?
And then there are things that are we can have a whole debate about whether they're physically addictive or not, because we do know that that some people who gamble, their brain reacts, the reward centers in their brain react a certain way, and other people who gamble, their reward centers in their brain acts in a different way, and so they are much more likely, we say, quote, addicted, to be addicted to gambling, but then we could start to, there are people who say you cannot be addicted to psychological things. You can only be addicted to physical substances. Right. You can really get in the weeds there, right?
Okay, I have an answer.
But these are questions.
How's this for a good framework?
What
if you are not intending to specifically market to the I don't want to call them externalities or to the margins, right? If you're not specifically marketing to the 95th percentile,
okay,
right? So for example, you make pick a game, any game comes off the top of your head.
You mean an online game?
Just a game that exists in the universe. Just pick a game.
Football?
Okay, so you've created an app to where you play football, okay? And you do so totally unintentional. You just make it because you want it to be successful. But it turns out there is a small percentage of the population who your game is so good they've become addicted to it, and they're playing many, 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 many hours a day.
And they're neglecting their family and their kids and their work.
Okay. To various levels of detriment, or maybe betterment. I don't know. Maybe playing the game is the best thing ever. So if you're not intending to target those people, I think that you should only be judged on your median effects to the broad public. And and if you you can't, someone is always going to have extreme reactions to whatever you do, and you can't really use what happens at the margins and to say, oh, well, this is unethical, right? Because for the vast majority, there's always going to be a couple people.
Okay.
Right. So if you're
interesting.
Yeah. So if your intent is just to market to the general population, I feel like you should only be judged on what happens. But this, by the way, the mens rea for this is knowingly. So if you know or should have known that there are people who are reacting to this adversely, and you're targeting them.
Even if they're a small group.
Okay. Right?
Then
you're taking advantage of them.
All right.
Either, again, you knew about them.
Yeah.
Or you should have known that this small population on the margin exists, and you are, and you're using that small group and you're manipulating them because they're potentially addicted in ways that others aren't. Then you should be judged on both the median, but also on the margins.
All right. Now,
so that's when
that
was
interesting. That was an interesting. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
All right, but now I have a totally different question.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to go to a different angle on this.
Okay.
Which is the nudging angle. What if what I'm trying to get you to do is, quote, good for you, unquote?
Yeah, I am not. Well, so this is my political. I mean, it's somewhat political. I don't think paternalistic government is potentially a good thing.
But I'm trying to get you to quit smoking. I'm trying to get you to lose weight. I'm trying to get you to eat healthier.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Yeah. What about those things?
I don't particularly think that you should get a pass because your vision of what society should do is good, quote unquote. I don't think you should get a pass on that.
But isn't a lot of that's interesting.
With the small exception of perhaps drug addiction, because you're dealing with very strong, because it's not paternal if you're like actually like if it's heroin, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Or are you just showing your particular idea of what's good and what's bad?
Well, I guess that the argument is if I glare at you and I say you should be eating healthier, I as a person with individuality can decide what I do and do not want to do, and if I want to play in your little nudging game or not. And if I'd like to, so again, I go back to this all the time. Interview with Richard Thaler, who's a famous behavioral economist who's very into nudging. Wrote a lot of papers about nudging, and he said nudging is ethically fine because he compared it to a GPS. If you would like to deviate, you're always free to do so. You don't have to use your GPS. It simply makes if you want to go to a certain place, it makes getting there easier. And I think that's totally. I think that level of nudging is fine. But there are more intrusive methods of nudging, and I think particularly of the cigarette cartons that they completely cover in, for example, like the body, like the horrible lungs and like the missing teeth.
But wait, but you said drug addiction as an exception, and cigarette smoking.
Yes,
I mean that's an
addiction. And that's generally why I'm okay with that extreme level of nudging. Because
you are okay with the cigarette packs.
Me personally, yes, because it's not. I mean, cigarettes are kind of addictive. I feel like the more addictive it is, the more intense the nudging can be, because you got to fight fire with fire at a certain level, right? Like it's not fair if you're using that kind of level of something to have people, stop playing video games. Unless you have a choice if you want to waste your time playing video games.
How about conserving energy?
Yeah, no, exactly. If I want to go in my backyard and light a tanker full of kerosene on fire, I feel like I have the right to do so. And that's if you want to, and I don't, I think if you want to pass, there are problems obviously with like the social good. This is with the tragedy of the commons and global warming and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, so
That's
so
fine.
what but you can argue. Look, with cigarette smoking, you could argue this either way or so many ways. You could say, it's my right if I want to kill myself smoking cigarettes.
No,
I can
but this
do
is
that.
the difference, though. This is the difference because when I'm doing the nudging with the barrel of kerosene, I'm arguing with another human who has autonomy. When I'm talking about cigarettes, I'm arguing with the addiction of nicotine, which is not a fair argument.
But if I want to be addicted to nicotine and I want to engage in it, so isn't it my right to do it? How far?
Well, that's why I think it should be legal. I feel like it, like, you shouldn't make it illegal, but in that case, the nicotine is nudging you very strongly because you're actually addicted to it. And so then I feel that aggressive nudging is a little more
on
fair.
The other side.
Right, exactly.
All right, but you could argue that if you you're hurting the public good by smoking because now everybody's insurance rates go up. Or on the other hand, by the way, some people argue that you're helping the public good because you'll die earlier, and so we won't have to send you to the nursing home.
It's really expensive to die. I don't believe that.
Oh, this is, Guthrie, I got to say, this is really complicated.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I am not a big fan of really aggressive nudging if you're only doing it because of the public good problem. That's my personal opinion.
But isn't that what most nudging is? No,
well,
you think a lot of nudging is for the individual's health.
I'm talking about like really aggressive nudging, not like we're gonna put like the soda on the highest shelf so you don't see it
right, we're going to put the water at eye level.
Yeah.
The healthy food first in the cafeteria.
So I believe it was a Thaler. We're referring to a research study that happened at a couple different hospitals, I believe in Boston, in which they were seeing if they could use gentle, positive nudging to influence consumers' choices to buy healthy foods. And so they did this by a couple different ways. First of all, green was great choice. Yellow was okay alternative, and red was try and find better to find a yellow or green alternative, right? So red was not bad. They didn't use the negative language, but that's anyways. And so they labeled everything in a cafeteria in a hospital, and this is like a big hospital, so tens of thousands of dollars every day at lunch, and so they did that. They labeled things. Then they moved things around, right? So you put the carrots at eye level, so that's what people see first. You put the chips on like the bottom shelf, so you have to like reach. You have to take like a little bit more action to go reach and get the more unhealthy food. And they were able, and not surprisingly, to slightly influence people's buying decisions. So that's like that in my mind is a gentle nudge. And I feel like that kind of nudging is fine as long as you're upfront that you are doing nudging. Personally. Right? So if you're like, I'm going to try and nudge you to eat healthier, and this is what I'm doing, I'm okay with that.
All right. So we wrapping up here. Where does one go with all this? Like, where do we go with this?
We just started. This is hour 1 of a 6-hour long discussion.
Okay, but we're wrapping up hour 1. How's that?
I don't know. You and the time limits.
So where do we go? Where do we go next step on this? Like what? So all right. So we talked about, I think, some kind of interesting things. I don't know that we would get agreement among very many people about this, but I'd like to hear from some of them. But like
anything we're supposed to get through.
What's the point?
Well, we didn't get enough into the behavioral science aspect of ethics. And now that we know that there are lots of ways we can influence behavior.
Yeah.
Is it ethical to use that power to to just people are sheep, okay? They're dumb sheep, and study after study shows that people are just big sheep, and they don't even realize that they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
You know, study after study that we read, they ask, did the manipulation have any effect on your decision? And they're always like, oh, no, never. Yeah, that's silly. That's crazy. I had no effect. And then, of course, like, everyone just does literally whatever they were prompted to do. So we humans are not infallible.
All right.
So is there some sort of ethics not to take advantage of that power as designers?
All right. Well, so I guess I'm going to rephrase my question.
Uh-huh.
What are we talking about in part 2? That what you just said? Assuming that we're going to continue this ethics conversation, what would be the next topic?
Well, the framework I proposed was a dual variable framework for measuring the potential degree of violation. Which, again, as summarized, part 1 was how invasive the behavioral science action was that forced my response.
Okay.
Right. So again, something jumping out would be very high. Maybe the story of a person who got LifeLock, which is in your slide materials, being lower. Right. We're using the power of stories to influence you, but that's that's a little lower on the suddenness, on the invasiveness spectrum, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then part 2 is the magnitude of action that the behavioral science trick or influence has. So if it's just to grab attention, well, okay, whatever. If it's I'm making you feel like you're worried your grandchild will die, and therefore the action I'm requesting is to empty your bank account. That's quite high on the ethically dubious, because it has a really big impact. So
okay.
So I think so those together then form the basis of determining how ethical or not ethical a particular behavioral science action or marketing is.
All right.
And to summarize again, if you're just acting generally, you should only be judged on the response of the median person. But if you know or should have known that there are people who are on the fringes, on the edges, who are being affected in a different way, then you have to take their reactions into account.
I am definitely going to have to ponder this. So I'm going to ponder this.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not. Look, this is like the 4th time we've done this. We did it with Near once. We did it with Near again in San Francisco. I think we did an episode about this like a year ago.
With Blay, we talked with Blay.
It's never. Nothing's ever gonna happen.
We talked with Natalie.
It's just it's.
No, I think something should happen.
My thoughts are coalescing, which I think is nice.
I'm gonna ponder this, and we're gonna come back to it.
We find people like the ethics discussions. I feel like I talk too much on this podcast.
Well, I think you were driving it, which was good, because this has always been difficult for me, and as you know, people ask me a lot about it, and I never know what to say. So I find this really helpful, but I'm going to think about it.
Why is it difficult?
Because I never know what to say. But this has
because you're afraid of failure.
No.
Tell me. Can you elaborate?
I feel like I'm visiting a therapist. No, I can't elaborate right now, but we'll do another episode, and
What would your father have said in response to this? So No, but wait, just because you haven't thought about the issue enough and it's very complicated. Was that why you didn't know what to say, or because you're afraid of making of saying perhaps things that would be insensitive or taken extreme?
No, I okay. I'll try and give you an answer. I think the last 10 years of my work has been about understanding the unconscious factors of human behavior and how that relates to something we could call behavioral design, right? How do you design a product or service in order to get people to take a particular action? And the more, and I came to it at first just being interested in the unconscious processing and what was the new research showing. But then it became very apparent that one could use this to design something that would be more compelling and engaging. But then, of course, that leads to these questions about ethics. And then, if it got to the point where people would often ask me, is this ethical? Are we manipulating people? And I had never, I am not an ethicist. And I was concerned, but I didn't know what to say. And I felt like if you were going to ask whether, I felt there was a line between fraud and not fraud, and I did the work for the FTC, but, otherwise, was it ethical to get people to press the button and buy the TV? I wasn't sure, and I didn't know what to say about it, and I didn't even know how to think about it. So that's why I've not delved into it. Now that we've been talking about it this last couple of months, and now that you talked about this framework, I'm becoming more confident about having the conversation. Oh. There. Did that help?
Yeah, that was nice. That was good.
But I want to get even more clear and more confident, because now if we're going to have a conversation and if I'm going to try and answer this question, I want to be more prepared. So we'll have to come back.
I feel like I spent this episode, I talked too much about my college philosophy class.
No, I felt it was necessary to talk. Personally, I felt like I had to work through all these pieces, so I'm all right with it. I never had the college ethics class, so.
You never took college ethics?
No, I never took ethics.
Never took a philosophy class? Well, you were.
I took a philosophy class, but not.
What's the difference?
Didn't come up. It didn't come up. All right, Guthrie, we've whittled away more than an hour. We got to go.
That means I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we go,
yeah,
I haven't done this in the last couple episodes, and I want to say it now. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, you enjoyed this podcast, and if so, would you please rate it and review it at iTunes or Stitcher or Overcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts, because that will really help us a lot get the word out about the podcast. And then, if you want to reach us and give us your ideas about this episode or about any other episodes, you can reach us at
info@vteamw.com.
All right. Okay, Guthrie. Well, don't go selling any of those weight loss things before I talk to you again.
That was you struggled with that. I did. That was a closing line. You were really you're trying really hard there.
I had to find something.
Oh boy, that's pretty funny.
Bye, Guthrie.
Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. And I don't know. I think it's good just to talk about ethics with you and your team, and if it's important to you, say something. If you see something, say something. I will talk to you all later. Susan, thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.